first thing that we thought was, well, we need to find a tune that serves as the inner voice, right? The conscious mind. What is that tune? Should it be abstract? Should it be something that we just make up? Should it be like, what is the sound of your own thoughts? And we came across this Moonlight Sonata. It was like a cover, and we just thought it was so almost haunting, but also repetitive and driving, and there was depth to it, even in its most simple form. And so that's where we started the that ends up being the theme, the theme of like thought, right? That is just what it is. And so you hear Moonlight poke in and poke out and poke in and poke out throughout the entire show.
This podcast is sponsored by FJM, Fred J. Miller Incorporated, found at fjminc.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Marching Roundtable podcast. This is Tim Hinton, the beast of the marching arts, and we are talking about my corps. Yes, I'm an alumni, of course. Everybody knows of the Phantom Regiment, and we are talking about the regiment today. On the line today, Tony Hall, the artistic director, is with us. Tony, how are you?
Good, very, very well. Thank you for having us, Tim. This is awesome.
Of course. So happy to talk with you guys. Matt Penland is with us, a percussion battery designer. Matt, how are you?
Oh, good.
Awesome. Glad that you are here. Stephen Estudillo is here, the visual director and designer. Stephen, how are you doing?
Fantastic. We're having a great year and all things are good.
Well, we have to start right there. I mean, like, everybody loves this show. Everybody loves the regiment again this year. And Tony, this is like 4 or 5 years now where regiment's continuously being a fan favorite. So I wanted to start there and just say, what's going on? Do you feel like is like make it like, obviously the shows are really well designed. The performers are just, are performing amazingly well. But like, do you have any idea what's in the sauce this year?
Well, similar to the last year and the year before, it's all about the designers trusting each other and making sure that, we're capping the other one's point of view. So if Stephen has an idea, JD is piling on. If Matt has an idea, Stephen is piling on, and we're putting these things together. But we always keep in front of us that we're here to entertain. And maybe the most important is that we want the kids to have fun. So we choose music. We have a program that's put together that they're going to enjoy, and in turn, the audience, just latches on and enjoys it right along with us.
Yeah, Stephen, you can always tell if the members of a marching group love their show, and I feel like we're getting that from the regiment for sure. The joy of the performance is just coming off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. This year's show, we really wanted to put the performance into the hands of the performers. So we wanted to choose something that was very pertinent to them, and what more pertinent than their own minds. So this concept allows them to put who they are into their performance. We're not asking them to portray something that they're not able to imagine. We're asking them to portray themselves in different scenarios, in different emotional states, in different things, maybe experiences that they've been through. And so that's allowed them to really shine throughout the performance, and for the performance to feel genuine to them and authentic. And in turn, obviously, the audience responds to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, the percussion continues to grow every year, performing at such a high level. How are the performers feeling about it?
I mean, they're loving it. They're having a great time. I mean, this is the best the group's been in a little while. And it's just, the number one thing we're always talking about it, me and Tyler and Cheese, the main leadership, are capturing it too, just talking about the consistency of the staff, and that's causing the consistency of the members, because we're finally getting members to return over and over, and it's making the group easier to get better quicker. I mean, that's the name of the game, right? It's just like trying to retain staff members, retaining information, retaining kids, and it just makes the group better.
And Tony, obviously you're giving the members such a great experience that they're all wanting to come back. So congrats on that. That makes such a big difference. I want to jump to the color guard next, because everybody's talking about like the regiment color guard is on fire. Like, so great. like so clean, so expressive. What's going on with that, Tony?
Listen, having Blake Dutton and his crew with Aaron Boone and all of the choreographers that they have, they're exceptional. And I have to tell you that everybody is, including the alum of the Corps, the past color guard members are coming back in droves and loving what's going on with them. My wife marched guard in 1989, Phantom, and she's loving every single bit of what's happening with this color guard today. Those kids are strong, they're resilient, and they are there to perform. And you could see it in their face. I sat on the field the other day on the 40-yard line, the front sideline. I pulled a folding chair just to watch the color guard for the entire show. By the time it was over, I was sweating, and I was so excited about them. It was like I was in the show with them. That's how much they perform and how well they perform. It's awesome. It's stunning is the word.
Yeah, I mean, it's really remarkable. And people were talking about it from the very beginning of the season, and it's just grown from there. Stephen, there's that moment in the ballad where the entire horn line is like in that cage. It looks like a giant cage to me at that point. And the way you have placed the color guard just to fill the field, that is just breathtaking moment. And then, of course, they're so clean and they perform it so beautifully. Like, thank you. I just want to say thank you for creating that moment for them and for us, because that's just wonderful.
Yeah, no, that moment was a really fun moment to put together. You know, we start the design conversation with these pillars of what things we want to be like marquee moments in our show, and the choices between those pillars really are informed by either moving away from pillar one into pillar two, or moving in towards these marquee moments. And so that moment in particular was something that was a vision of ours really early on. We knew we wanted to do it. We knew we wanted it, we wanted it to look like. And sure enough, conceptually, it adds to the overall arc of the show with we see these particles, these segments of performers, echoing back and forth and calling and responding. And we translate that to being errant thoughts and negative thoughts and fears and anxieties and stuff, things like that. And so once these cages collect and we're able to suppress the inner voices, there's moments of clarity in our mind, and we're able to move forward. And so that whole sequence is really the intent of it is for us to find that sense of calmness, that sense of peace, that sense of satisfaction that we get once our mind is clear, our anxieties are at bay, our fears are trapped and suppressed, and we're able to be a best version of ourselves. And so that whole thing, how it all came to be and how it's being performed has been really a highlight of our summer for sure.
It's just wonderful, and I love that you just explained that. Listen, everybody, I'm gonna ask them to sort of explain each section of the show, so we kind of know what they're saying in each one, to make sure we're enjoying this as much as possible. But having said that, I was just sitting here thinking before we started. I was like, okay, why is that so special? Because I've seen horn lines crammed together and guards. I've seen that a million times, but like I guess you just described it. It's what precedes it and the moment of clarity that appears, and of course the performance of the guard members is just so wonderful. I've said that a bunch, but yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to come back to you, Stephen, and we're going to talk about this section of the show. But Matt, I also want to say it's also, to me, like really noteworthy that there's this beautiful introduction with Beethoven and stuff, and then it's like drum time, you know what I mean? And like there they are, and they're right there, and that's a long sequence. So how does that feel for the members, or how do you feel about that? Like, to me, that's very sort of a ballsy choice for you guys to say, like, okay, here's the drum line and they can play.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely it was another thing, like Steven said, one of the beginning of like early design meetings we talked about kind of coming out with intention with the percussion and feature and purpose kind of as our second year, and we could feel that it was growing and rising, so we knew we'd have a good opportunity to do that. Personally, I just made the decision that I wanted it to be like a minute-long snare moment, standalone with just the snares, because I knew that we were going to have certain membership, and it just felt like a unique thing to do, trying to contrast from what we had done in previous years where we, the traditional like snare bass quad, 4 bars each. We're just trying to move away from that completely and just front load one section at a time, which we do again later in the show too.
Yeah, it feels innovative to me. It feels like, okay, this is not what I expect, and then like you said, it continues. So it's really effective. So let's back up and let's talk about whoever wants to do it, or you can do it together, like what each section of the show is about and how you move through them.
Well, let me first say that the pacing of the show is in your mind like how you would take your thoughts through a period of time. And I'm not going to give you that period. It could be from morning to night. It could be a month long. It could be a year long. But you go through so many different things. You go through so many different emotions and so many different thoughts that hit you. And like Stephen said, when you get those intrusive thoughts and then you have to calm yourself down, and then you have the joyous moments, and all of those things came into play as to how we were putting the show together. And then when Stephen and JD started laying it out for how do these things fit, and I think that's where you're at right now, talking about each individual moment. But those moments mean something because of what came right before it and how they fold into that next moment. And it takes you on this journey that you can feel. You really feel it, and you're okay with that next move. You're okay with the variety because it's time. And when we give you that release, it's time. We led you up to a point where you needed to feel that way. And that's something else that we always have tried to do with the percussion, with the visual, with the brass, with the color guard, is to make you feel something. And I think that the design team did a great job with that for sure. Stephen, do you want to take us through Moonlight and what that represents?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting to note that this year's show, like the genesis of it all, started off with a list of 700, just like sayings, like mind over matter, or I'm of two minds, or things running through my mind, or peace of mind, or I'm of two minds, and blowing my mind. All of these just little like short 2-word phrases. And so we filtered through and we started to look at which of these phrases had action, which of these phrases had emotion, which of these phrases had, lent themselves to, different visual opportunities, musical opportunities, mind bending and things like that, and things that we could hear and see. We then layered them in a sequence that provided us just a stream of consciousness, right? Like a natural progression of ideas running through your mind into trying to calm your mind, into you're starting to lose your mind, into and so that was the starting point, right? We had this board and we had tons of phrases. We started crossing off the ones that we didn't think that were really viable, and then we started to organize them in pacing, right? Musical pacing. So the first thing that we thought was, well, we need to find a tune that serves as the inner voice, right? The conscious mind. What is that tune? Should it be abstract? Should it be something that we just make up? Should it be like, what is the sound of your own thoughts? And we came across this Moonlight Sonata. It was like a cover, and we just thought it was so almost haunting, but also repetitive and driving, and there was depth to it, even in its most simple form. And so that's where we started that ends up being the theme, the theme of like thought, right? That is just what it is. And so you hear Moonlight poke in and poke out and poke in and poke out throughout the entire show, which is just a state of consciousness. We then also wanted to deliver that message when all of the cubes start at the very, very beginning, connected. We wanted that to represent the mind, right? The physical prop represents the mind, and we wanted to physically open it up and dive inside. And so when we start the show with the color guard at the center of the prop, and we start to deconstruct the cubes themselves, we see the guard enter, and the guard now becomes the inner workings of the mind, all the stuff that you have in there that you might not even know about. And so that was kind of the impetus for the Moonlight Sonata motif and how we start the show. And then we just strung together all different types of, unique phrases that led us to an emotional journey that leads us to what we then have as our 2024 production.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world. And now that you've described that, I'm reframing it all in my head right now. I'm thinking through the whole show, like bing, 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 bing. And that all makes a lot of sense. And the thing is, every great show should have a great theme, right? A great theme melody. Like that's always powerful when it happens in a show. And I think that's why when you get to the very end and you're bringing us to that big climax and the theme returns, people start standing up. And unfortunately I wasn't in Austin, but like I'm watching the video from the Southwestern thing, and I'm like, okay, there's like a lot of show left, and people are already on their feet and screaming and clapping. Like that's got to be so rewarding.
Right, and to that point, when we got to the ending, the phrase that kept coming to play was, we want to blow people's minds. We want something to be so mind-bending and mind-blowing that they're up on their feet for the last portion of the show. And sure enough, the competition, the way we lead into that with the drum feature, again, to showcase our strengths in the percussion world, all of that just has this tons of momentum leading us to the blowing of the mind. And sure enough, we were able to implement a new ending this past weekend, and it seemed to be well received.
We move out of that opening where we're peeling back the layers of the mind and moving right into our percussive feature, surfacing, and that's a descent into the mind. And Matt, why don't you tell them what's going on there?
Yeah, so this piece, surfacing, Tyler and I have always been really inspired by percussion ensemble works, because it just works really well, and we get to add our extra little layer to make it work in the pageantry world. But this piece, surfacing, was written by one of our friends, Dave Hall. It's kind of been on our list for a while. It made a lot of sense when we talked about, actually, initially this movement was meant to be mind bending, was like where it came from. I think it's kind of morphed into maybe more like the dark descent into the mind or into the subconscious. But the impetus was like darkness and bending, maybe mind bending. Maybe we would have done some type of bending thing there, which we hint at still. But the piece lent itself to that, and we went so far as to say, like, how can we musically represent that in a drum feature? Then we have, we worked with John Camera, our sound designer, who's been amazing. And if you listen to that second movement, there's a lot of like pitch bending. We did a lot of like rhythmic bending. In the middle of the snare break, we have a huge deceleration rhythmically. It excels again as the pitch bends in the sound. That's all integrated on purpose. And then we went so far as to kind of make up this rudiment. We don't even have a name for it, but we tried to think of what rudiment can we do and then kind of bend it out of place. So we kind of took this right at the end of the drum break. If you're trying to listen for it, you can hear we played the same thing twice, and then we kind of shifted over like a 30-second note almost to make it shifted, but we play the same sticking. So if you're really in the weeds of a drum nerd, we physically are representing that concept in our drum feature right at the end.
Well, I think you totally need to name that, man.
We tried to name it the other day, but Jesus didn't like any of the names I came up with, so we're still working on it.
Okay, well, you got a couple weeks to figure that out, but I think you totally need to name it something. Either, at the very least, it's going to be the Penland, but I don't know if that's going to stick or not. But
not the catchiest name.
Okay, so that's very cool. So then, what's next?
Yeah, so from that point, we move through the descent into the mind, and the way we describe it is just to imagine a camera in the inside of the inner workings of the mind, and you just see all the ideas flying by, running through, and things shifting as quickly as they came. And so we enter running through the mind, right? So in our programming, we see musical ideas come and go rapidly. We see bodies physically run from one place to another. We see fast shifting of geometric forms. We see like these incredibly athletic featured guard moments and flag moments. And the whole impetus behind this whole sequence is we want to see the ideas come and go as quickly as they can. And there's obviously a ton of intensity. There's a ton of athleticism in all of this, just to represent that feeling of, I'm a father, so I'm thinking all the time, like, oh, I got to get that email done. Oh, I also got to go grocery shopping. Oh, wait, but there's also laundry to do. I got to drop off the kids at school. And I got, so all these things that are constantly sharing the same space, that is what we see our third production being, right? It's just ideas running through the mind. And I think that the neat thing about this tune is that if you take a step back and you watch it from a more holistic perspective, you're going to see the shifts happen as quickly as you change a thought, right? So we're focused and centered on one idea, and all of a sudden, while that's happening, some other thing evolves rapidly and is now the focus. And I think about this all the time when I'm driving, reading a sign, I miss my exit, all of these things that happen just because all of these ideas are kind of flooding and running through your mind at all times. So that production is a really, really high intensity, kind of high octane thing intentionally, right? We want to make sure that we can represent all of these ideas running through your mind all at the same time.
Yeah,
that's
musically.
Go ahead.
No, this is a great example of why people are connecting to the show, because everybody knows what that is, right?
Sure.
Like everybody knows that experience of your mind doing that.
You feel it.
Yeah.
And just when you're at the edge of your seat and you need to have that release, comes our next production of the second part of Equilibrium. And it's our peace of mind moment that Stephen was explaining a little bit ago, and how we need that. We need that calmness, and it comes, and it almost happens right out of it. Where you're sitting there and you're watching, and the audience is feeling the same thing that we're providing to them, an opportunity to catch their breath, and that's what happens.
And that's why it's so powerful, and why I was moved from it watching it on video. You know what I mean? It's because you can just feel that expansion and release thing that's so powerful. And it's also, we're going to talk more about the props in a minute, but the fact that the props come back together and our mind is, that's just really well done. It's like, really, this is all very smartly done, guys.
It's also that second part where the props come back together is really the first time the Moonlight Sonata comes back in its entirety too, in the front ensemble. That's the first time you really hear the theme again since we did it from the opening, is when we're back to the comm after the running through and the bending.
It's nice.
And how the performers line that up with the front ensemble, so far apart. It's just amazing that they're feeling it, and they're moving through this thing, and you could see that. Even that is intense. Even though it's a calmness, it's so intense. It's perfect.
Yeah, I love the way you've just really made that work because of the pacing and everything else. Okay, so then we get into this super jazzy thing. So what is this? Because I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like Regiment, but I'm not hating it. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty great.
Don't you have that moment every now and then in your head that you just let it all hang out and you have fun? There it is.
Yeah.
The whole impetus on this chart in changing the mood was originally, the little angel and the little demon, right? Or the little, should I go or should I not? It's almost the Jekyll and the Hyde, the indecision, being between two minds, being of two minds, and trying to figure out where in that process you start to kind of go a little stir crazy between the ears. And so, JD found this tune, and fortunately we have these wonderful performers, a bass trombone soloist and a euphonium soloist, and they just go to town on this tune, and obviously a virtuosic presentation on their part, but it also, like you said, gives us an opportunity to have such a distinct range of varieties of music and that I think certainly sets us apart from the people that we're performing around. And so the thing that conceptually was interesting for us is just this idea of kind of losing your mind and going a little crazy. And so sure enough, it's a little bit of fun, it's a little bit of wild, it's a little bit of kooky, it's a little bit of everything all in one. And the color guard does present these smaller cubes, which is just another implement that we're able to use that conceptually fits. And it catches light like crazy, so it's incredibly effective when we use them. And so the whole thing is really just about, having fun, having a good time, also just kind of being a little bit kooky, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we really enjoyed exploring this summer so far. We felt like it's worked really well for us, and it's been a massive change of pace, just like in teaching, right? And just in teaching it and getting the kids to perform, and obviously giving the performers, again, an opportunity to be who they are within the context of our entire show.
And in that short period of time, how many minutes are we out there? 12 minutes, whatever it is. The moods that they have to change into from each of these presentations, each production is so different from the one that came before them. And we're asking our performers to make that move, to be in a new character and switch on a dime. And it's remarkable how they take that to heart and how they're able to portray that new mood right away. And I want to say something to your comment about this doesn't sound like something from Phantom Regiment. I don't know of another year that we could have pulled this off, but having Matt and Tyler throw that beat behind us that allowed us to groove the way we do. And it's fantastic. And I listened just to the percussive moments of that. And I understand exactly what they're doing, what they're playing without having the brass in there. And I feel it, and it gives me the same emotion. Even if the brass wasn't in it, I know exactly what they're laying down, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, that chart was that was really fun to write. That's like a drummer's dream to write it, like that little in between tempo, kind of what I would consider. I guess I am not insulting it. That's an old school tempo to me. It's kind of like an in between slow tempo, but really fun to write with and really fun to play to. So that was one of the quickest, easiest writes for us. It was like, oh, I got to write a groove and really fun rudiments and everything underneath. This is like great. You just have to support the soloist. It was, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, and the thing I love about it too is that like I'm like an old school regiment guys, and so this could have offended me, but like you made it make sense. You know what I mean? Like I'm just talking for my crowd, like you made it make sense in the show. Okay, I understand why it has to be there. Like I'm with it, because and it's just great. I mean, it's super entertaining, and the kids are knocking it out of the park with their performance and the whole thing. Tony, I want to go back to something you said a minute ago. The performers are being asked to switch their emotions on a dime, to change the way they're thinking in their mind immediately. Like, is there something that you guys or the educational team are doing to help them learn to sort of control their mind and emotions and switch on a dime like that? Because that's not simple.
Well, listen, I'm going to pass it over to both of these gentlemen here to talk about their caption heads, because they are the reason why these members can do what they do. And if they don't preach it to them, they explain it to them. And then they try to pull those moments out of them with an explanation as to why it's necessary, how it relates to the piece, how it connects to the programming. And they're giving them that information. So our caption heads aren't just saying, and here's the beat, and this is your dot. It's a lot more than that. And that's how we're able to get that performance. But Jesus Sanchez, Aaron Boone, Matt Hartwell, Stone Wang, Ryan Edmondson. And there's so many people that are out there honing their craft and making sure our members are strong at it. Stephen, you want to talk about Matt and how he does that and his team of people?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like Tony mentioned, Matt Harwell and specifically Lauren in the movement on the movement side they have both been just paramount, and as well as the entire visual team and movement staff. Like they've just been paramount in pushing our performers into new and at times uncomfortable situations when it comes to performing and emoting. And the amount of growth that was found in that discomfort over the past 2 years, right? 2, 3, maybe even more, has been outstanding. And but ultimately, what they're doing is guiding their performers into their own body, like getting them comfortable being who they are, getting them comfortable committing. Like again, this show is intended to be very relatable, not just from the audience, but also from the performer. So we're describing circumstances in where they would feel these moods, where they would feel these feel changes, where they would feel the way that we expect them to portray in the show. And then we just craft it from there. We're allowing them to be vulnerable, or giving them opportunities to be themselves, and we're allowing them to just take ownership of the performance themselves. So there are some really silly techniques that we use. We do some improv classes. We do some, obviously the marching fundamentals and all that stuff is still a large part of our training sessions. But Matt and Lauren and their teams have just been so on it from day one, really understanding the overall and being able to game plan and create a curriculum that helps us get to where we are now. And then every single choice, every single experiment, every single workshop session has been geared towards with the understanding of what the show is intending to do. So there's been this really great cohesiveness from the training to the the different exercises and how it relates directly into the show. So we've been able to plug the performers into our show pretty seamlessly just because of Matt and Lauren and their team's preparation.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I hope everybody listening, you need to rewind the last 5 minutes and listen to this again, because this is profound what you guys have accomplished here. Because what I think the audience responds to is there's this courage and this, no one feels inhibited in trying to portray what you're wanting to portray each part of the show. You know what I mean? Like, if they're looking crazy and angry, then I'm seeing it, and the fact that you've found a way to teach them to be that authentic and real and expressive so uninhibitably is like really exciting. And I think that's one of the visceral things the audience is reacting to. And then the fact, Tony, that you described, they're making sure they understand what it is. Like, they're not saying act happy here, but it's like, okay, here's what we're saying, here's what you need to be thinking. All of that I love. That's really powerful stuff. Okay, so crazy jazzy, losing my mind, whatever. So what's next? We're near the end, right?
No, Matt, go for it.
Yeah, then comes our next percussion feature, which I believe the impetus for this was kind of going out of your mind or losing your mind. Certainly, we're trying to find a way of, like, I hate to use the word, I don't know, like schizophrenic or just like completely scatterbrained. Like, we're trying to bounce off the wall. So me and Tyler chose another percussion ensemble piece that's been on our list for a long time called Pillar 3 from Andy Kehoe, who's a drum corps alum, and his music has always lended itself well, especially because there's so many mixed meters and it's kind of intentionally hard to follow and plucky. So like, we didn't want the audience to be able to feel the groove, stark contrast from the previous thing on purpose. And similarly, I was just trying to think of ways we could, physically represent that. And I just kind of like chose really sharp rhythms. We play this like 2/16 note rhythm. And if you really pay attention, we play it like on the rim towards the beginning, shows up in the middle a little bit. And at the end of the drum break, I play it full out fortissimo rim shot. So it's kind of like interjecting itself, like your thoughts are interjecting. And then by the end, it kind of takes over before we pass it off back to the horn line.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, and then
all hell breaks loose. This is where the audience stands for the next, I don't know, 2 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it gets very intense here.
Well, I mean, and the theme comes back, right? So that's part of it, and then you've set me up coming out of this chaos into this moment. Like, this is like a clinic in pacing, guys. And you did this by concept not by just choosing tunes. Like, this is really interesting how you're describing this process.
Right. The end tune, we were really focused on, like, how do you summarize all of what you just saw? You know, not to reduce it to this, but the variety show, right? So you started at the top of, let's just say, some type of water surface. It's almost like diving into the ocean, right? We started the show at the top of the surface, and we're just sinking down and seeing the depths. We're seeing the ideas running through the mind. We're seeing places that are eerily calm. We're seeing, you know, strange things at the bottom of the ocean, and then we get to this dark depth of the ocean that that is that percussion piece that Matt was just referring to. And we thought, you just experienced this entire spectrum. What better way to recognize what you saw, you know, by reflecting it back to the audience and portraying the idea that the mind is powerful beyond belief, beyond our comprehension. The mind is infinite, and there's just this power and this poise behind it. So really, in this water analogy, this closer represents the ascension back to the surface, right? Getting all the way back and breaching surface and realizing that what we just uncovered was this, again, this mind that was powerful beyond our belief. So we bring back the Moonlight Sonata theme. We play it in its probably most powerful form we possibly could. And again, we reiterate with the cube. You know, we unwind, the drill form unwinds, peels the entire mind open again, and we're seeing it and we're hearing it. And then we recap with this visual, you know, kind of fiasco at the front of the field with all of the spinning cubes. And the whole field is just, you know, really passionately performing this concept that the mind is powerful beyond measure. And that's where we end our entire production. So we feel like it's been a wonderful, wonderful way to end the show. And we feel like we've certainly seen the response from our audience, you know, because of it.
When the core unwinds and as you said, peels back, that mind coming out of that diamond, and that's the shape of the portals that we have set up are in a diamond shape, and the color comes out and fills the entire field, and that color guard is spotless, and it's exquisite what they're doing and how it pulls you in, because it changes the form, the dynamics, where the horn line was there, now they're on the outside, and the color guard is taking over the inner space, and you're watching this percussion feature going on in the middle of the color guard. You know, you can get goosebumps just talking about it. Really, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's doing everything you wanted it to do. What did you plan for the cubes things to spin? Is that planned from the very beginning and you just threw that in now, or was that like a happy something? Or you don't have to admit this. You know.
No, I mean, it's a great question. Yeah, we planned for it to spin from the get-go. Ultimately, we wanted to take this ordinary object and create as much unordinary effects as possible. And so when we went out to visit our prop builders in where they're at, we were sitting there playing with it, tinkering with it, and just the random idea of seeing it spin came up. And so they're fantastic. Jeff Herr, Chris Lewis, and their team has been absolutely fantastic with us.
They're the best.
They just engineered geniuses, and so they were able to whip up really quickly a spindle, and we sat there, we loaded it up, and we took a step back, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? I gave it a quick spin, and the rest is history. So we knew.
While we knew spinning it, I'm on the phone getting funds to pay for it. So.
No, those guys are amazing, and it doesn't shock me at all that they were a part of this thing. So we talked about the props off and on, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I do want to mention that I do think that the props, these cubes, what do you call it? The cubes, the piece, do you have a name for them?
Portals. We call them portals.
The portals into the mind. Okay, so like everybody seems to be involved with them, but not in a way that feels like, oh, we're schlepping props around the whole show. Like there's somehow you sort of manage everybody seems to be involved with them, lifting them up, moving them around. Stephen, that seems like quite the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. So the props, we were very intentional this year in making sure that the prop wasn't seen as a prop. The prop became the main character of the show, right? The prop is the mind. That's what the show is. So there's no hiding behind it. There's no like, hey, go and change your shirt behind it. There's no equipment changes behind it. They're pure geometric shape that represents either the mind as a whole, a mind as a part, an entry point to the mind, an exit from the mind, a connectivity of the minds. And the mind is super versatile. So it creates lines and shapes and balance and volumes in our heads all the time. And so we knew that when we manipulated the prop throughout the show and how we wanted to integrate it in terms of its staging presence, it wasn't just like hey, let's delineate space with this object. How does the performer interact with the object? How do you interact with your mind? You're moving towards your mind, you're moving away from your mind, you're entering your mind, you're exiting your mind. And all of those mannerisms and behaviors are subsequent byproducts of how we interact with it. And it's the performance becomes a byproduct of that relationship, right? And so we definitely were intentional in how we wanted to use it. Everyone's always involved because it's not a prop. It's a piece of equipment. It is the main character of our show, and that's why it's so it changes constantly, and it's constantly being utilized as much as possible. Trying to create the unordinary out of the ordinary, for sure.
Yeah, well, you move them and you do what you're supposed to do with the prop, which is like you use it in ways I expect, and then you move it in all kinds of ways that I didn't expect at all, and then there it's rolling over on its side. Oh, it's upside down. Like it was very interesting to watch, and not in a way that seemed cumbersome. So you're right, mate. Explaining it as you just did as the main character of the project of the show explains a lot of things. Who would have thought that having somebody hanging in the middle frantically and then falls to the ground, like who would have thought that would be like such an amazing moment of general effect? Like how did you figure that out? Because like it was shocking to me how effective that was. Is it the fear of him falling? Is him letting go? Like how did you figure out that moment?
Yeah, that too was intentional from the get-go. We thought, how do we create the idea of descending into the mind, how dropping into the mind, and that feeling of like hanging on before this unknown adventure, right? Yeah. We do use that in order to portray the descent, the fall. And sure enough, we got some of the performers to hang up there. We got the rest of the performers to lift up the portals, and the moment we just saw the descent, we knew immediately that was going to be an iconic part of our show for sure.
Yeah.
You put that against the power of that horn line and the rhythmic intro to that from the percussive unit, and you're captivated right there, and you see that happen, and it's almost a shock, and everyone is responding to it exactly how we felt it.
It's just not, it doesn't seem to me to be all that often that you have these grand concepts and you figure out how you want to portray them, and then they all work. Like, guys, my hat's off to you guys. You know what I mean? Like all the things you're describing are really engaging and surprising, and I'm gasping, and so congrats. Like, shows are hard, and making a show that really works is like a miracle, honestly, everybody. So I just, my hat's off to you for really making this all, it's like home run after home run with you guys, and I just feel like this year's show is working on all those levels that you intended, and that's so hard to do. Yes, just want to say that, like, it's really hard for all the effects to actually work the way and the audience to react to them the way you really intended. It's so hard to do. So congrats.
Thank you for that. And for us to be able to keep on brand, it's the Phantom Regiment. It isn't a departure from who we are. it's the next step. And there are more steps for us to take, that's for sure. But we're not going to leave behind being the Phantom Regiment, but at the same time, we're going to be contemporary. We're going to be out there with the pack. And where we're living right now, we want to be leaders. And I believe we are in the activity.
Well, there's no doubt everybody's talking about the regiment again this year, and I'm just super, as you know, like I said, this is my core, and I'm so proud and happy about it, you know, and I just seeing the crowd on its feet with 45 seconds left to go, like this is just a designer's dream. So I'm really, really happy for you guys. Why don't we go around and I'll ask each of you to say anything in closing that you want to wrap up something you had to say or something you want to say about the show as we're finishing. Matt, it's unfair, but I'm gonna make you go first. What would you like to say? Anything in closing to sort of wrap up the conversation from your point of view?
I'm not sure I have anything new to add. I just want to piggyback on what Steven said earlier about just the what makes the show special is the emotional connection that you have to, aside from all the super specifics we just got to, the zoom out of just like feeling that you get because you recognize it, all the music, so it hits you on an emotional level right away on top of the visual element of it all. It's like that's what makes it special, even for me. And I've listened to the show 3,000 times because we started it in the fall, you know, and I still was just at the show in San Antonio and teared up, and I know exactly what's going to happen. I just saw them do it earlier today. So you know the show is special when like the people that wrote it still get tear up just from like listening to it and the connection that I have with it. You know, we write a lot of shows. It doesn't happen with every show, right? I try to make that happen every show, right? But this one really feels special, and you can tell the performers feel that way too, which is goes back to what you were saying. I mean, it's making it easy for them to perform because if we feel that, you know, they feel that if they're out there.
Yeah, we're feeling what they're portraying and what they're feeling, but also, as you described earlier in this conversation, your staff set them up to be able to do that and to feel entitled and comfortable to do that. And that's what makes it really work. And it's quite an accomplishment. Stephen, what would you like to say as we're closing?
Yeah, you know, I think in addition to the performers being the people who are bringing it to life, it's the staff, it's really everyone on board. There's no one person that pulls more weight than the other. It's, you know, and we certainly try to set it up so that every single person feels like a sense of ownership over their teaching, over their part of the product. And, you know, I always saw those shirts that, you know, Phantom, before being a part of Phantom, that said family, PHAMILY, and I understand it now. I understand what that means, and I understand, and I can see how everybody on board, the sewing crew, the cook crew, the bus drivers, the administrative staff, the teachers, every single, even the vendors, everyone comes to us. We open the doors, we make them feel like family, and so, you know, there's no one person here who really makes this show come to life. It's the entire ensemble, it's the entire organization really kind of pitching in, and it's a really satisfying type of work that it seems that everyone feels contributing. So you know, I think that's something that is often overlooked. You know, it's often like, hey, this great choreographer, you know, great, you know, whatever, and really if you zoom out and you really kind of take in the value of everyone's contributions, this show would not be the same without every single person that we have. So I think that's something that's really, really special about this show.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. Tony, what would you like to say?
I agree with both of these gentlemen. And what everyone doesn't get to see is that we're hitting all cylinders right now. The board of directors, the administration, the director of the drum corps, Dwight Emmert, the volunteers, all of these people are working to help produce what you're able to see. And they're doing it in the background, and they're stars, they're superstars. And then you take note of the performers that are out there. I couldn't be more proud of the membership that we have this year. And I give 100% to them. They are giving 100% to us and to their fans. And I want to see the fans turn it right back to them. That love goes both ways.
Yeah, well, I feel like you're getting it from the audience for sure. I think it's awesome. All right, if you're listening to this, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go see Drum Corps live, okay? You got a couple weeks to do it. It's such a great experience. Try to get there. You want to hear this regiment show sitting in the stands. If you can't, then make sure you're watching. And if, by the way, if you're at the show, buy yourself a regiment t-shirt, support the Corps, or from any Corps that you love, or go online and buy it. The regiment has a fantastic online store. Buy yourself a regiment t-shirt, support the Corps. Guys, I'm so impressed with what you've accomplished. Thank you for explaining all this to me. I'm loving this show even more than I did before we started this conversation. And congrats. Good luck the rest of the season, and thank you for taking time to talk to me.
Thanks, Ed.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.